You know, this year's felt exceptionally long, especially with the events of earlier this year with, well, the whole OGL fiasco. But hey, if anything, it gave us some games to look forward to, including Daggerheart from Critical Role, as well as whatever MacLeod and his team are working on. But the game I'm probably most excited about is Tales of the Valiant from Kobold Press. For those unaware, Cobalt Press has been a long-time third-party developer for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. They have made some excellent third-party supplements for both players and dungeon masters in terms of monsters and player character options. In all honesty, a lot of their options actually make the game a little bit more interesting, especially for monster stat blocks, as a lot of them can provide very interesting alternatives and go beyond just monster hit a million times. Truthfully, I talked about Tales of the Valiant before. Back then, it was known as Project Black Flag, and I was more or less doing a comparison as to how Cobalt Press was following a very similar trajectory as Paizo, which is why I think Tales of the Valiant could become the next Pathfinder. Potentially. The jury is still out on that, because, well, the company's paths as to how their games came out to be is, well, rather similar. But that is that video, so if you want to go check it out, go ahead and check it out. But today, I want to talk about why I'm excited for Tales of the Valiant. Right out of the gate, let's just go ahead and go into how character creation is done to explain why I'm excited. For ability score boost, you get a +2 to any ability score of your choice and a +1 to any ability score of your choice. Very similar to how Tasha's does lineages. However, there's a caveat. The +2 can go to any ability score that's of 16 or lower. The +1 can go to any ability score that's 17 or lower. Which means, if you did point buy or rolling dice, and you got an 18 somewhere, guess what? You can't apply that +2 or +1 anywhere. You have to wait to have a 20 ability score. Granted, I know other systems do this as well, Pathfinder 2nd edition included. It's really hard to near impossible to get a 20 ability score at level 1 with how it does its stuff, but still, I just love it when a system has a cap of an ability score at a certain level, because the game makes it very clear that the vision for your character will kind of be there on the start, but you will have to wait to get that max ability score. It's the way of them showing that the character is developing mechanically throughout the course of the narrative. And what better way to reflect that than an ability score improvement? The next element that I think is great for character creation is how it does its ancestries. So something like, let's say, well, Pathfinder or even D&D 5e, you basically choose your ancestry, and that's pretty much it. Here, however, what you do is you choose a lineage and then a heritage. So let's say you want to be a half-elf. Well, technically, half-elf isn't really an option in Tales of the Valiant. Rather, you can say, well, I am a human lineage, but I have elven heritage, which right there, in the mechanics, you are telling the story of your character. And this is one of the reasons why I am really liking Tales of the Valiant already. We are just at the start of character creation, and the game is informing us that your choices will have an impact on things. It's very subtle, but the communication is there. But to go even further down the rabbit hole, let's go ahead and talk about classes. You see, right now we don't have a great view on a lot of the classes. Kobold Press, I think, actually did a pretty smart thing and gave us a limited view. Most classes going from about level 1 to level 5. And that being said, I'm going to see if I can provide a link to all the playtests within the comments and also potentially description. You can also check them all out in the alpha release. It's a PDF that costs about $10, which has basically everything compiled there along with some updates. So it's well worth it checking out there. But overall, how the classes are going to function are very similar in their progression to D&D 5e, which again is a reason why I'm excited for it. For those who have played Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, the transition to Tales of the Valiant will actually be very smooth because it's going to use a lot of terminology and very similar structure that they are familiar with, but it is going to make enough tweaks to help give it its own personality. There is going to be slightly more crunch within this system than you are familiar with 5th edition. For instance, let's say that you want to play a fighter. Awesome. Well, you go for Battlemaster. That is fantastic. Well, the game's versions of feats are not fully available to you if you do this. Feats are known as talents, and there are different talent types. So for instance, there's martial talent and arcane talent. If you're a Battlemaster fighter, you only have access to the martial talent tree. However, if you go with their version of the Eldritch Knight, guess what? You now have access to the martial talent tree and the arcane talent tree. So something like this, where choosing your subclass gives you access to an entire new part of the game, such as arcane talent, is a subtle way to make it feel like the player had a choice in the matter, that they are unlocking a specific element, and make it even feel like their fighter is going to be different than another fighter on the field, more than just because of their magic, but because they're going to be access to different feats than another fighter archetype. It's a very subtle way to do it, but it leaves a great impact. And it tells a great story that makes a lot of sense. Of course, the Eldritch Knight would have access to arcane feats that the Battlemaster wouldn't. Now that being said, I don't think Tales of the Valiant is a perfect game. Going back to Battlemaster, at least currently, there are, well, 2 abilities that are basically just the same ability for different weapons, and that is really, well, disappointing. So there's some things here or there that I can nitpick about and I do think are problems. So yeah, for me it's not all sunshine and roses with Tales of the Valiant. I do think it has problems. But above all, I think it has promise. I think it has promise to be a really solid update for D&D 5e. Maybe more so than 1 D&D, but the jury is still out on that. We need to see how it's going to function. But from the playtest and the fact that you could even run an adventure right now, a level 2 to 4 adventure, is actually really interesting. In Tales of the Valiant, player characters are going to be a lot stronger. This is made very clear by the publishers. But they have monster stat blocks to match. And the monster stat blocks are really interesting and have a lot of great abilities, as is common with Cobalt Press. And the fact that it's following a almost exact structure with 5th edition means that all those 5e books that you purchased, you can pretty much still use for Tales of the Valiant, at least based on the information we have currently. And you can just modify things accordingly, because the progression is exactly the same. So all that considered, I'm pretty excited for this game. So yeah, even though this year has felt exceptionally long, especially with everything that has happened with Wizards this year, there will always be games to play. There's Pathfinder 2nd Edition Revised coming out soon. That's totally not going to age this video at all. Along with Tales of the Valiant, Daggerheart, and, well, much more. So if anything, next year is going to be proving to be a very exciting year for the tabletop hobby. So keep an eye out, and let me know which games you're excited about for next year. So with that, everyone, keep being awesome, keep rolling those dice. Cheers.